do here. Not my favorite rhetoric. But on the other side, I think that the leaders who are there, there's some world leaders there, but there's also business leaders. Reality has set in. Mm-hmm. For a long time, they thought, well, President Trump really doesn't want to be president,
right,
or that he doesn't really want to run again. He doesn't. And now they're starting to realize after the first year that he governs very differently than he campaigned, mm-hmm, and that they're figuring out a way to work with him. And today there was a roundtable that he did with some business leaders, and all of them were like, we've got investment in the United States, and we're planning to increase that. Mm-hmm. And pretty soon, all of these companies, there's going to be so many companies in America that are announcing bonuses that if you are the outlier and you have announced and you have not announced bonuses, that will become the story.
No, it's
Fox News.
Not bonuses for people like you, Jesse.
What is that supposed to mean?
You're under contract. But, but don't you think that pretty much like you can? It's easier to say like which companies haven't gone ahead and done it. Maybe companies are still thinking about it because you hear news about it every day.
No, it's such a good point, Jesse. It's like a weird version of a combination of trickle-down economics and peer pressure.
Yes.
If you start watching everybody do it, I mean, how can you not deny this cause and effect? It's happening.
Well, it's not trickle-down economics. It's more of like a flood.
Yes.
And it's not coming from the top down. It's broad-based and growing out.
Flash
it's not
flood.
just, yes, flash flood, Water's World. It's not just $1,000 bonus. Some of it's profit-sharing checks. They're getting checks $5,000. They're reinvesting in America. There's a
also they lowered the prices of the energy costs at several different utilities across the country.
That's right. And some companies are even throwing money into college funds for the workers and things like that. So it's going to be very difficult for the Democrats to run against winning. I don't see how they do it. How can you deny your 401k exploding? How can you deny tax cuts which benefit you in your bank account? They're like climate deniers, but they're winning deniers. It's so easy.
That's a great line.
It's so easy, and you could see it coming from a mile away, yet not one Democrat voted for the corporate tax cut.
Yep.
And the deregulation is responsible, too. The only way they're going to have to run against him is just go super negative and try to bring out women, blacks, and Latinos, which don't usually turn out in the midterms. It's not a sure thing winning back the House.
I'm stealing winning deniers from my show on Saturday.
I saw you wrote it.
I wrote it down. All right, so, Juan, I want to play a SOT from another network. I know. But you got to help these people out because nobody's watching.
Right.
This is their take on Trump and Davos.
And we should point out one other thing. The chair people of Davos this year there are 7. I believe all of them are women. When I look at President Trump right there, I mentioned Klaus Schwab is with him, Jared Kushner, Gary Cohn, Rex Tillerson. He's flanked almost entirely, well, there's one, by white guys.
So, Juan, obviously they have race on the brain over at MSNBC. Nothing but white men. Clearly, this is a racist gathering and must be stopped. This is almost an alt-right event.
Yeah, it could be, except it's overseas, right? Yeah. No, I mean, I think the economy is going great, and I think everybody is excited and wonderful. But if you're saying that this is somehow good news that he's at Davos bragging about the American economy, let me tell you, there are several economies overseas that are doing even better.
Like
one.
Which ones?
Oh, there's so many, but China is obviously doing much better. And then you go into Europe
workers get
and
paid
the Germans.
pennies over there.
Oh, okay, all right. So now we're making excuses again.
Well,
the second
excuse, it's reality.
The second thing to say.
You have like slave labor.
A minute ago you were saying the American economy is just booming. It's never been like this. Second thing to say is a majority of Americans credit President Obama, not President Trump. With responsibility.
Are they really
for
Americans?
The good. Oh, I see. Anybody who disagrees with Trump is not an American. Fake news. Fake news.
Kimberly, can I play?
Can I finish?
I guess so.
And then this morning's papers have Republicans rebelling against Trump because he's raising tariffs that are raising prices, and people are saying, well, don't do it. And then don't forget, the farmers and others are still lobbying against the idea that he wants to break apart NAFTA.
I think that
break apart trade
This is
deals.
what makes Republicans honest, because they because I have problems. I don't want a protectionist leader. I have a theory. I have a theory. He's playing tough with these deals, but I don't think he's as protectionist.
Well, I'm just saying. I just say there's a lot more to this story about the economy, and the idea that he can run on the economy. Obviously, if most Americans think the economy is booming, doing great, but they don't credit Donald Trump, that's not good news for Republicans.
Well, let's see how long they're able to try to create an alternative reality, alternative facts there, and not accept that Donald Trump has actually done quite a bit here. I mean, look, you've got a housing rebound, the economy's accelerating, jobs numbers up, infrastructure development up. And there's a lot of positive things happening here that you can credit President Trump with, including the corporate tax cuts. So all of this is actually positioning not only the president, but Republicans to have something to work with in terms of these midterm races. So he's in a very good position. He's there in Davos. It's fantastic that the president is participating and showing up there. I'm sure some of the people are quite upset that he's taking the press away from them, but he has wins on his side, and he's coming strong out of this whole battle with Schumer and DACA. So, you know, right now, this is a very positive positioning for the president.
Well, you know what I think is the fact is that what you see at Davos, Kimberly, is people who are saying, I think the theme of the whole thing is fractured, world, but we have a shared future in terms of a global economy. And so they are going ahead in terms of trade deals. They're going ahead in terms of trying to work together multilaterally. Meanwhile, Trump is there saying, oh, no, this is about bilateral agreements with the United States. And he's saying we are putting the U.S. first, and we are about isolationism, if not protectionism. That is not a happy message.
You know what amuses me? When the left said Trump was going to crash the economy, then the economy accelerates, and they say Obama gets credit for it. I square that circle.
No, you
How about
can't.
the American
point.
people say
Plus,
that?
when people get a $1,000 bonus check in January 2018, how is that Obama's?
By the way, I
responsibility?
think the latest polls are 40% believe the economy's better has to do with Trump, and the other ones are split. So there's no majority of Americans
But
who feel this way.
and for Republicans and President Trump, they're definitely improving just even in the last 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And part of that is just all the good headlines. But I have a couple points. One is that for Democrats who didn't vote for these tax cuts and tax reform, this could have been theirs. President Obama did want to cut the corporate tax rate to 27. The corporations were excited about that, but he wouldn't budge on individual rates because he wanted to increase taxes on the rich. So all of this could have been theirs. And the companies that have announced bonuses, imagine what they would have done.
Oh, God.
To bend over backwards to try to help. And so there's a
Starbucks
mixed
especially.
opportunity. The other thing that works in conservatives' favor is that you see some companies pushing to $15 an hour. That was done without the government telling them that they had to. So,
Right.
so that is another way for conservatives to say that the market works. The last thing I would say that is good for the president to do is that as he meets with these other world leaders, Theresa May, Macron, and also Kagame of Rwanda, there's going to come a time when he will have to ask one of these world leaders for a favor or for help, and that will be politically unpopular in their country for them to do it. But if he has personal relationships with them, it's more likely that they'll be willing to pony up.
That's a salesman. You know, one last thing. Switzerland, they, in my belief, that they should not be allowed to have activists. If they are neutral, they're not allowed to play. That's like dealing yourself at a blackjack table without any chips. You know what I'm saying? If you're neutral, you can't protest. How about that, huh?
All right.
Are they neutral as a
people.
military power?
I don't know. I don't read a lot.
Oh, okay.
Switzerland or Sweden?
I get them confused. I know one of them.
Interchanges them back and forth.
One of them yodels, right?
Yeah.
The Swiss yodel and the Swedes
Fish.
They fish.
Well,
Don't do it at the same
there is
time.
the
kids.
candy, the Swedish fish. Remember?
All right. I think Donald Trump's going to come back with a few Norwegians. I don't know.
Not in that whole country over there.
Oh, my God.
Well, President Trump, be meeting with Mueller soon. He wants to testify under oath, and he's looking forward to it next.
Yeah. Watch the shirt tails flapping in the wind. Sidewalk running. See the people hold you from the back.
President Trump's always said there was no collusion with the Russians, and he's ready to talk to Robert Mueller to put an end to the investigation.
Are you going to talk to Mueller? I'm looking forward to it, actually.
Do you have a date set?
Just so you understand. There's been no collusion whatsoever. There's no obstruction whatsoever. And I'm looking forward to it.
Do you have a date set? Do you think you're
I don't know.
going to
No, I guess they're talking about 2 or 3 weeks, but I would love to do it.
Would you do it
But,
under
you know,
oath?
again, I have to say, subject to my lawyers and all of that, but I would love
Would
to
you do it under oath, Mr. President?
Oh, I would do it under oath.
You would, yeah.
Absolutely.
Some top legal analysts, though, think it might not be the best idea for Mr. Trump.
This is an extremely dangerous situation to allow the president to get in because he does not know and cannot know as much about the case as Bob Mueller and his fellow interrogators will know. And he might very well say things which would lead them to other areas of investigation.
It leaves me worrying that what's going to happen is that this investigation will end not with a bang but a whimper. The great worry is that because he doesn't have anything really substantial, he may go after obstruction of justice, which would create a constitutional crisis.
Kimberly, it is very clear that it would not be a good idea for the president of the United States to go sit down with Robert Mueller and answer questions under oath.
Okay, so says top legal analyst Watersworth.
Do you concur?
I concur, counsel. Yes, I think it would be a very bad idea. I don't think you should ever offer to give testimony. And I think the problem is when you do something like this, it's very true. You can open up other areas and then they start going there. And also inconsistent statements, problems like that. Then they try to say, okay, you're not guilty of a crime, but you lied to investigators. They try to then impeach you with some prior statement or get someone else to contradict you. So that's why you see his attorneys pushing back on it. And Ty Cobb saying, okay, wait a second. Let's see,
Ty Cobb cleaned that up pretty quickly.
Yeah. Under advice of counsel.
The cleanup hitter came
Throttle
in there.
back. Yeah.
Juan, he's probably just being a little cocky, wants to show that he's confident and doesn't have anything to hide, and maybe just went a little too far. You don't think he really wants to go in there and go toe-to-toe with Mueller, do you?
Kind of does, though.
He's a very confident man, isn't he? I mean,
Yeah, maybe
my
too
impression
confident.
well, there we go. But but he's a confident. He probably thinks, he can sell, ice cubes to Eskimos.
He can.
and this thing.
Where do
That's
you,
racist.
yeah.
You're assuming they like ice cubes because they're Eskimos?
No, gin and tonic.
Go back
Apology.
to Davos,
Wait,
Juan.
gin
Back
and
to
tonic.
Davos, yeah.
What?
Where do you think the president, Juan, would be the most nervous or would get the most nervous answering questions from Robert Mueller? Where do you think he has the most exposure?
No, he's
Well, he's got so much exposure. That's
Where,
the problem.
specifically?
Well, if he starts asking him about things like, Michael Flynn or the firing of Jim Comey. But let's just go with collusion for the moment. What about Michael Flynn? What about the fact that Flynn lied about contacts with the Russians? What about your son having meetings with a Russian lawyer? What about you asking the Russians to hack Hillary Clinton? I could go on.
The what about? Okay. I think
So,
the president might even be able to respond pretty effectively to the what about question.
Where is it that
Dana, you went through this when the special counsel, you didn't personally.
No, I did not.
But that has to be probably the most frightening thing in the world.
As I recall, I don't remember precisely. I don't think there was ever a request to talk to President Bush about any of that. I don't remember that. Cheney, they did.
Can the president get out of having
Well,
to
I
speak to him
actually wanted
in
to ask
person?
Kimberly that. I mean, I wouldn't volunteer an interview, but can he be compelled to talk? I mean, it might not entirely be his choice.
Right.
And
This is what I like about what they suggested, because you don't want to look like you have something to hide or you're afraid, you're not being forthright, because the perception of that could be worse, perhaps, than even him coming forward and making a statement. What I like is a carefully tailored affidavit under penalty of perjury, sworn, that his attorneys with him, assistants of counsel, prepare to show that he is
because he might not have a
complying
choice, right? They
and
might have to talk.
cooperating, right.
But I also think that what he was doing yesterday was, it's not maybe, I think he's thinking 3 steps ahead. I don't necessarily think it's confidence. I think it is setting himself up to say, look, you heard me. I wanted to. You heard me. I wanted to talk to them, but it was the lawyers. My lawyer said no, so I got to listen to my lawyers. Surely you can understand that.
I think you're probably
And
right.
so there's the PR strategy.
I think you're right. Greg.
I think he's probably really good at depositions.
You think he's had experience?
just by experience. I mean, a deposition for him is like, a dental appointment for me.
It's like a Tuesday.
A Tuesday. But yeah, because he's kind of like, imagine like a rock climbing wall that looks really easy and then you get there and it just goes flat. I think that's what Trump is like when he gets into a legal...
Like Spider-Man.
Yeah, like you think
he clams up?
Yeah, there's no way to get on to find a place because he'll just be like, I don't know this, I don't know
it's
that.
the opposite of how he usually is.
And that's why I think that it's probably going to be hard for people to say, well, he didn't, like he wouldn't have known that obstruction of justice was wrong. But then he has all this experience, so I don't know if that's going to wash.
But isn't obstruction of justice, doesn't it actually have to stop the investigation? And the investigation still went on.
No.
Well, he never impeded the investigation.
He tried.
But when he fired Mueller, he didn't impede it.
Right.
Or, Comey.
Even this week with the question that he put I guess it was to McCabe about, who'd you vote for? I mean, these things are like indicating that he wants the investigation to go a certain way and not another way, and he wants politics involved.
He's flipped. That's
it
what
seems
he
to
does.
me.
He
It
makes
seems to me
statements
the
like this.
lawyers, though, for Trump right now are trying to use leverage, and I think Trump is part of this, to say maybe we would agree to a written question and we'll give you written answers,
What
as
is that?
opposed they don't want him before a grand jury.
Greg, you weren't here yesterday when the texts came out. Do you have anything to say about the texts?
Yeah, I apparently there is a lost and found. Who knew? I mean, where'd they find him? Under the pillow where, you lose your remote? This is insane. But you know what? They wouldn't have found them. They wouldn't have found them if there wasn't pressure from certain people to constantly
I don't think
ask.
that's true.
Definitely.
The
No one cared.
But the guy that found them is the inspector general, who doesn't have a dog in the fight, and he said they found him in
So it's gotta
basically
go back to
30
dogs.
minutes. That's
All
right.
Well, we do want to see these texts. Demented Dr. Larry Nassar will now rot in jail for the rest of his life. But the gymnasts he victimized want many more held accountable. Up next.
One chapter closed yesterday in the U.S. gymnastics sexual abuse scandal, but there is more justice to be served for Larry Nassar's crimes. Many people in power knew about the abuse and did nothing to stop it. The victims want to make sure they, too, are held accountable and that this never happens again.
USA Gymnastics is really an organization that's rotting from the inside out. They created a culture of physical, psychological, and mental abuse, but they also had a policy of not reporting sexual predators. When you have a culture that is abusive and then you have a policy of not reporting sexual abuse, you have created the perfect dynamic for a predator to be able to flourish.
It was a combination of the wrong people being in charge and neglecting things that needed to be done legally and didn't do them. 110% should have never met this man. He shouldn't have been in my life. Something went wrong.
We need to hold these organizations accountable. USA Gymnastics, United States Olympic Committee, MSU, they need an independent investigation. This is bigger than Larry Nassar.
Hours after Nassar's sentencing, the president of MSU did step down. Not much accountability in Lou Anna Simon's statement, though. Listen, she said, as tragedies are politicized, blame is inevitable. As president, it is only natural that I am the focus of this anger. I understand. Therefore, I am tendering my resignation. Kimberly, are there more legal acts to be taken against people who might have known about this and didn't do anything?
Yeah, well, potentially. I mean, certainly there'll be civil lawsuits as well that can abound from this. First, you usually see a criminal prosecution, that precedes a civil litigation, or some kind of class action could come forward, just depending, because there's certainly quite a large number, of young girls that were victimized by this individual. And then it comes down to these organizations and them being held accountable. What did people know? When did they know it? It does really remind me of Penn State. And you think about it in terms of these abuses, like, was someone told? Did they not document it? Did they allow it to continue? So there's an ability there for them to bring something forward to say, you had a right and you had a duty to protect and to keep us safe, and yet you put us in a very vulnerable and dangerous, position where we were victimized. And I think that young women were quite articulate in terms of explaining their position and their vulnerability and using their voice to say that there should be more of a thorough, independent investigation into these entities.
Kimberly brought up what happened in the Sandusky trial, and remember, all of people there said, never again. And I think it's interesting how human beings, we continue to learn these lessons over and over again.
It's so sad. And, in reading and listening to the young women talk about it, it was shocking to me. They said that they were told that it was required that they allow this man to come into their hotel rooms, their dorm rooms, any time of night. No nurse in attendance, and no restrictions on what he was doing. And they were told, this is what you need to do. If you don't do it, you're going to be punished, and you'll be penalized in terms of participating with the team. So what's interesting to me is the statement coming from the president of Michigan State, because she's basically saying something that sounds reasonable on its face, which is she's the president of a huge, important university. And how is she to know what some miscreant doctor is doing down there? But on the other hand, you realize Indianapolis Star broke this story. Other people have been involved, and there was a very slow response. And I would think that she should have known at that point something is wrong here, and we've got to protect children. Same thing with the people who are on USA Gymnastics. I just think they become blind in terms of pursuing competition to protecting children.
It was really remarkable how Kimberly said how articulate they were, and I was saying during the soundbite, they're poised, they're so mature, and they were going through all of this inner turmoil, Jesse, and yet they were able to perform and be just amazing athletes and students as well.
Right, but I don't think USA Gymnastics thought of them as athletes. I thought they probably thought of them as just gold medal factories. I don't think they saw them as human beings. There's red flags everywhere. This is the biggest sports scandal in history. Juan touched on it a little bit. I'm reading some of this stuff. The doctor never wore gloves. He's walking around not wearing gloves, alone in hotel rooms. He was the first call they were supposed to make at nighttime. He's isolating them in mandatory camps across the country where they're cutting off communication with their parents, their agents, and their lawyers. And the minute you complain, you're told you're not on the team anymore. I mean, this sounds like you putting a serial pedophile in charge of young girls for decades, and no one saw anything abnormal about it. This is not just Penn State level scandal. This is Catholic Church level scandal, and I think Congress needs to get involved.
I think that I think that there is a call for at least a hearing and maybe more. Greg, Juan brings up the Indianapolis Star. Investigative journalists were the ones that were the initial instigators that led to this lawsuit.
Which meant that this stuff was probably percolating, just like the Harvey Weinstein stuff. It was percolating. People knew or heard things, and then somebody finally said, I'm going to go follow it up. I think when you're seeing a lot of unhappiness after this sentencing, because we realize there's actually no adequate punishment to fit the crime. There's no punishment. I mean, I suppose you could skin him alive, but I don't know if we're allowed to do that.
ISIS.
No, but you would. I mean, really, is skinning alive really that bad with this? But I mean, people who argue against the death penalty always say that living in prison with the guilt of what you've done is actually worse than death every day. And it's like, I disagree. I think you'd be surprised what people can live with and adapt to. Human beings, animals evolve to their surroundings. He will figure out a way to live unless he decides not to live because it's so unbearable if people make it unbearable. Which
Dana, can I ask Greg a question?
Sure.
What do you think of this judge? Because I worry about the judge. I think she went a little. I mean, Larry Nassar should go to jail, but boy, she put on a show. Now, is it cathartic for the women involved? Is that what this was about, or did she think that because he's a bad guy, she can use the power of her standing to just beat the living daylights out of him?
Oh, we talked about this.
It's interesting because the case is so heinous that I had a tinge of misgivings about some of the high drama. But if there's a case that can forgive high drama, it's this one. If it were a different case where it was like Juan Williams, dealing with parking tickets or something like that, and somebody's like going, "You work for Fox News, you're a terrible person."
Yeah.
That's because there are cameras in the courtroom and people get hyper dramatic. In this case, I can see that I found it to be highly dramatic, but in this kind of case, it's almost like, what?
Let me give Kimberly the last word, because one of the things, I listened to the Daily podcast this morning, and they had interviewed a few of these girls about what it was like to confront him. And they said how cathartic it was, how they felt like a burden had been lifted off of their shoulders, and that she gave them encouragement. And, victims' impact statements are part of the Supreme Court ruled that this is allowed.
It's permissible, and there's plenty of evidence to document that it is something that is very healing. It's important for them to have their voice. We talked about this yesterday, and so many of the cases that I've prosecuted for sexual assault and domestic violence, crimes against women and children, the one thing that they say is to be able to have their day in court and stand and face the person that has committed heinous crimes against them is very empowering and very helpful for them moving forward in their life. So the judge was well within her rights to do what she did.
Okay, John Kerry's reportedly considering another run for the White House. The 2020 buzz ahead.
John Kerry's White House bid didn't go so well for him in 2004, but now there's word he may try again in 2020, this time to take on President Trump. There's also a report floating around overseas that the former Secretary of State has tried to undermine the president's Mideast peace efforts, advising Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas not to yield to President Trump's demands but that report is unconfirmed. So, Dana, where do you go with this? What do you think first and
I'd
foremost
love to see a
about
little rematch in 2004. That was a good year.
rematch?
Well, remember John Kerry ran against President George W. Bush in
I don't think
2004.
George W. can run again.
No, I just mean like watching John Kerry run again would be interesting. I have to ask my friend Michael Meehan what he thinks. He was the chief of staff to the campaign. Look, Americans usually give a president a second term. That is just historically what we do. It is very rare for a president to lose re-election. And I guess the Democrats probably think that if they had a chance that this would be their time, but I don't know. I don't think Democrats want to go backwards. I think they want to look for somebody new, and John Kerry is not going to fit that bill. Plus, I have heard that President Obama has said that if Joe Biden wants to run, he will have his full support. So if you're going to try to run without Obama's support, that's going to be tough.
Kimberly, what do you think about the report that he's telling leaders of the Palestinians, don't worry,
Terrible.
Trump will be gone in a year?
Terrible. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. That's the worst.
I mean, that's not going to help him at all whatsoever.
And it's not going to help the Palestinians
It's not going to help
either.
the Palestinians.
Idiotic.
Not helping Kerry.
Traitorous.
It's just outrageous is what it is. But listen to me. This is not going to bode well for Kerry, Swift-Boater. It's not. His time was up. It's done. He's not going to be able to win. President Trump would just clobber him. So I don't even know what they're thinking. I mean, Joe Biden's obviously a much better choice.
Jesse, what do you think?
Well, it's not the first time Kerry's been accused of being a traitor. Trump would devour John Kerry. I could see it now. A boring bike riding John, a
Like a
Ron
burger
deal
with
John,
Heinz ketchup on it.
Windsurfing.
married for money, windsurfing Johnny, the plastic senator from Massachusetts, smeared Vietnam soldiers. He would wipe the floor with them. It wouldn't even be close.
You think so?
Yeah.
I know so.
I see. Okay.
I don't think he stuttered.
And so, Greg, the other part of this is that, clearly the Trump administration is holding money back from the Palestinians. They recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. These are things that the Palestinians and a lot of their allies overseas are saying, well, what happened to the U.S. as a fair partner potentially negotiating a long-standing peace deal?
That is actually what he's talking about is fair, and it's disgusting what Kerry did going over there undermining the president. It's just wrong. But watching John Kerry run, think about that. It's like a praying mantis skipping. He's like that. He's like a cigar store totem pole without the flexibility. I'd call him a driftwood sculpture, but I already said that once. And you're right. Trump is going to treat him like a bath mat. He's going to wipe his feet on his head.
I do wonder if the Palestinians floated that story and that it's not true. I mean, the Kerry piece, it doesn't sound like something that he would do, and so that could be fake news.
Well, the
Why can't we
Palestinians
withhold
also have refused to meet with Vice President Pence, which upsets President Trump because Pence went
what I
over
was
there to
saying
meet
is
with
fake would be that Kerry said to the Palestinians, just hold on
Don't
because
give
he's
in
not
to
going to be
Trump.
president
Yeah, we
in a
haven't
year.
confirmed.
I think I wouldn't put it past the Palestinians to make that up in order to get attention.
Yeah, remember, you got a lot of angles here. So anyway, did you have a sandwich for lunch today?
No.
You may be destroying the planet, according to some global warming alarmists. Anyway, Kimberly will have more next.
Messages keep getting clearer. Radio's on and I'm moving around the place. I check my look in the mirror.
Welcome back. I'm very upset. Two of my favorite things, sandwiches and meat, they're coming under attack. Did you hear? Environmentalists are pushing for a tax on meat, claiming hamburgers, steaks, and other delicious delectables are harmful to the environment. And then there are the sandwich police. You know them. Some scientists claim that they're bad for the planet, too, for all kinds of reasons because of ingredients and packaging. So, Dana, can you believe this ridiculousness?
No, I also saw that there's going to be mandatory roof gardens in Denver.
What?
Yeah, no, you should go do Waters World.
Mandatory.
Mandatory roof gardens in Denver.
Yeah, it's
yes.
like greening the
I think
city.
that the environmentalists should take a page out of the Donald Trump playbook and try to figure out a way to make the art of the deal. There are a lot of conservatives, it's a surprising number to me, that support the idea of a carbon tax. And if they were to do that, then all of these other little things that they want to do that would hurt the things people are trying to sell for people to eat, would go away.
All right, Greg, what do you make of this? I mean, you're a carnivore.
I am, and I'm gonna break this story. I've sent it around to you guys. No response about how giving away straws at restaurants you can go to jail. You guys don't even read the stuff I sent you.
Okay, just so you know, nobody got that.
Oh, we weren't on the email.
All right, never mind.
What is wrong with you? No one got that. You didn't send it
Let's
to
talk
us.
about some evolutionary science here.
Okay.
Meat made us the king of all beasts because there's no other way to get protein-rich nutrients than meat. You can say, oh, eat spinach. You're going to have to rent a U-Haul to eat all the spinach that you get from a steak. It's a fact. The reason why we have these brains is because we ate so much meat for 200,000 years. So if you think about PETA and environmentalist groups, veganism, they're all able to exist now in 2018 because of the meat eaters of the past who built this amazing civilization that allows unfocused adults to chase their fringe causes.
Okay, so I don't get this. It's so crazy, Jesse. So they're saying that this causes global warming, all of it. I mean, it's unbelievable to me. What about the children, Jesse, to eat sandwiches?
You got to do it for the kids.
Children
the
are overrated.
Lunchables. Don't touch the Lunchables.
Right?
Americans will tolerate crazy left-wing environmental wackos to a certain extent. When they tell us we can't use the aerosol deodorant, we say fine. When they say we have to put the bottles in a different bin and recycle, we say okay.
We kind of say okay.
We say okay. But you know what? Then they come after the meat and they come up. No.
Drawing
They've
the
already
red line at the
said,
meat.
We're drawing the headline at the hamburgers and the hot dogs. They've already talked about we can't drive certain cars. We don't like that. They've also said something about sodas. I think they don't like drinking big gulp sodas anymore here in Manhattan. So it's gotten to the point where it's become too ridiculous, and they're just clowning themselves.
I had 2 hot dogs today, no bun.
Ew, no
Atkins.
bun?
Well, I didn't have any.
Atkins?
No, I didn't have any
bun?
edible buns. There was nothing.
Did
so I
you
just
eat it with
ate
a
it out.
knife and fork, or were you just...
I cut it up and used a little spicy mustard.
Oh, my God.
You didn't have any pepperoni for a quesadilla pepper?
I also had pepperoni today, too.
It's good to, you're going to be doing this in 10 years when you're my age, pal. No more bread. You're going to be eating nothing but meat.
What's wrong with the bread?
Carbohydrates, sugar make you fat. There's no question about that.
I'm not so sure about that.
No.
And what kind of diet are you on now?
Wait till you see my one more thing.
Greg.
I'm just saying.
What happened then over the holidays?
People in New York, they don't eat bread, and they put toxins in their head.
All right, Juan, what do you have to say about this?
You know what surprised me?
This is coming from your folks.
You know what? Well, let me just, before I get to that, Kimberly, let me just say what surprised me the most was they say the worst sandwich, the one that has the most impact on the environment, is a breakfast sandwich with sausage, bacon, and eggs.
Yeah.
They said it's the equivalent of driving 12 miles if you just eat one.
Well, then I drove all over the country this morning because I had
Did you eat two?
Yeah, I had 2 bacon, egg, and cheese.
Oh
Look
my
at you.
God, they're so
Look at
good.
you.
Would you go for a bacon, egg, and cheese over like a sausage, egg, and cheese?
I prefer the bacon, egg, and cheese, but
Yeah.
if the sausage has a nice little lean patty on there, I'll take the
Yeah.
sausage.
The
Well, I don't know.
Starbucks
This
has
is
a
worse
lean
than
one.
your private plane now in terms of what the
But if you lose
cost
the
to
bread on those
America.
sandwiches, what you're eating is 10 times better than breakfast cereals, granolas, yogurt. A big dish of yogurt from Chobani or wherever is like having ice cream for breakfast.
Yeah.
But if you have lean meat, if you have protein, an egg yellow, the yolk, not white. Enough of this egg white crap.
I'm with you.
Enough of this egg white
I eat
crap.
the whole thing.
Eat the damn
the
yolk.
yellow.
The yolk is the most important thing.
You're pro-yolk.
No, I'm pro-yolk.
By the way,
Don't be
it's
so
tasty. It's beautiful. It goes.
You can get this nowhere else on cable.
But you know what? I have one last thing
I
to
had
say.
a hard-boiled
I
egg too.
can't-
I ate the yellow one. Lean
Oh,
over.
my God. Hey, take it easy. A man-eater. But I will say, I was stunned to realize it says that Americans eat 2 times as much meat as anybody else in the world.
Well, that's because we win all the world wars, Juan.
We got to go.
We're undefeated.
Oh.
Oh, how
Well,
did
then let's fix what's not broken.
All right, I agree. Well, there's more food stuff coming up. You know what I'm talking about. One more thing next.
All right, it's time for one more thing. I go first with this. Greg's total bummer news. This story will probably be it'll only be on this show, on this network, on any network in America. The announcement that Marquise Smith from The Fall passed away yesterday at the age of 60. Nobody else cares about this guy. This is the lead singer of The Fall, one of the seminal punk bands, one of the most disagreeable geniuses on the face of the earth. If you haven't heard of him, he's an acquired taste. I urge you to look up his stuff. Go on YouTube. Search Cruiser's Creek or Dr. Buck's Letter. His music is amazing, and he will be missed.
Have you ever played it on the show? I don't know.
I just played it today. I played.
Described yourself, disagreeable genius and acquired taste.
Thank you. All right, rest in peace, Marquise Smith, that is. All right, next up, Juan.
Well, my twin granddaughters love dolls. They're regulars at the American Girl Place and own an army of Barbies. Now there's a new generation of dolls breaking barriers. Mattel released photos of new dolls modeled after actresses Oprah Winfrey, Reese Witherspoon, and Mindy Kaling, who star in Disney's film adaptation of the beloved children's book, A Wrinkle in Time. Fans on social media are gushing over the dolls, and the film's director, Ava DuVernay, noted how special it is to see a diverse representation of powerful women in Barbies. So now I'm rooting for Kimberly and Dana as dolls.
Kimberly.
I would love to be a doll.
Transition.
Oh, thank you so much. It's time for Kimberly's Food Court. Okay. Taco Bell lovers, identify yourself, Greg.
Me.
Yes. Jesse?
Although my intestine disagrees.
Okay. The next time you place an order, you may want to just ask, do you want fries with that? Because we've got these super delicious Taco Bell cheesy fries.
Look at that.
They come with this like nacho cheese. Jess, what do you think? You've been eating a lot of it. It's got a little spicy kick to it. Do you love it?
Okay.
They have Mexican seasoning on it. And I think it's like a bargain because you get the side of cheese.
Taco Bell is the Edison lab.
It's so good.
They invent.
Okay,
All right.
thank you so much. $1.
Yes.
$1.
Got it.
Wow, that's
You
good.
can
That's
get
a
all
bargain.
of this, and it's a la carte
Rachel looks
fries.
for a bargain.
But it's only for a limited time, so I think you should seize the opportunity
now.
here.
All right, Jesse.
Okay, so we've reported all year the NFL has a lot of problems. Now the NFL has a new challenger. A new league is coming, the XFL. Remember Vince McMahon?
Yeah.
The wrestling tycoon? He's bringing back the XFL to compete against the NFL in 2020. It's going to be spring football, and there's going to be, I think, 8 teams, 40-man rosters apiece.
And no
But it
kneeling.
has some requirements about the national anthem and breaking the laws. Let's listen.
I think, again, it's a time-honored tradition to stand and appreciate the national anthem with any sport here in America, or for that matter, in any country, they do that. So I think it'd be appropriate to do that. You want someone who does not have any criminality whatsoever associated with them. And in the XFL, even if you have a DUI, you will not play in the XFL.
All right.
I can go to sleep to that voice.
Yes, Dana.
I got to tell you, Vince McMahon, if you need a communications person, I know somebody that would be very good. It's not me, but it's better than me.
Quickly.
Okay, don't worry. You'll hit your end here. French President Emmanuel Macron is going to be the first official state visit for President Trump this spring. He'll be bringing baguettes. Why? Because he's actually lobbying for baguettes to become a protected world treasure by UNESCO. It would be an intangible cultural heritage list, along with things like Belgian beer. So we'll see if President Trump will get on board.
All right.